Good? Kelly? Okay. I'll call the Thursday, March 26th, 2026 meeting of the Cumberland Planning Board to order. Roll call. Mr. Zook.
Here.
Mr. St. Thomas.
Here.
Mr. Butler.
Here.
Mr. O'Neill is absent. Ms. Reese.
Here.
Mr. D'Ambrosia.
Here.
Mr. Costa.
Here.
And Mr. Kwiatkowski.
Here.
And the chair is here. First item of business is approval of the planning board minutes of February 26, 2026. Are there any additions, corrections, or deletions? And if there are none, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as prepared.
I have a motion by Mr. Butler. Second by Mr. Zook. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Yeah, yeah, right, correct. So Mr. Kwiatkowski, yes, I will, okay. For the audience and anyone else that's here, we have a new member, Mr. Gregory Kwiatkowski, to the planning board. This is his first evening, and that's why he's going to abstain from the minutes, because he wasn't here last month. Okay. So, next item on the agenda is zoning board of review recommendation, owner applicant David J. Barboza, location 11 Tower Hill Road, assessors plat 46, lot 7. The applicant requests a side yard setback variance to build an accessory dwelling unit.
Mr. Kutu, I'm just going to suggest that you go forward. You all have the recommendation.
Yeah.
Rather than me summarizing it, I think you should just
Certainly.
go through, and then if you have any questions, I can
Okay.
help.
Is there anyone from the applicant present? Come forward to the podium, please, and give us your name and address for the record.
David Barboza, 11 Tower Hill Road.
The board has read the memo and so on. Did they have any questions for Mr. Barboza at all? Okay. Do you have any questions for us?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, in that case, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion in regards. Sorry. Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion in regards to 11 Tower Hill Road, assessors plat 46, lot 7, that we send a recommendation to the zoning board of review that the requested variance for the front yard setback is consistent with the goals and purposes of the comprehensive plan, and include in our recommendation Mr. Lombardo's memo to the planning board dated March 19th, 2026.
I have a motion by Mr. Butler. Do I have a second?
So moved.
Second by Mr. Costa. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Good luck.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate it.
Next item of business is zoning board of review recommendation, owner applicant, I'm sorry.
Quick note, I think you said front yard setback to side yard setback. I think it's all spelled out in the application.
That's the request. Yes.
Yeah, but I just, for the record, I read off Mr. Lombardo's recommendation, which says front yard setback, but,
We're requesting the variance for the side yard.
so if we can just, do you want me to make a new motion or just?
I think it's noted for the record, the actual agenda item is a side yard setback, so we'll make sure that the recommendation is, written that way.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Again, is the zoning board of review recommendation, owner applicant Kyle Assant, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Location 1 Grants Mill Road, assessors plat 46, lot 556. The applicant requests a rear yard setback variance to build a house. Is the applicant here? For the record, your name and address, please.
Kyle Osant, 1 Grants Mill.
Anything to add to whatever's in the memo and,
No, I believe everything should be there.
okay. Board have any questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion in regards to 1 Grants Mill Road, Assessors Plat 46, Lot 56, that we send a positive recommendation to the Zoning Board of Review for the requested variance for the rear yard setback, as it is consistent with the goals and purposes of the comprehensive plan, including in our recommendation to the Zoning Board, Mr. Lombardo's memo to the Planning Board dated March 19th, with the correction in the last sentence that it should be rear yard setback and not front yard setback.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Butler. Second by Ms. Reese. Any other discussion?
Yes, can we add the
Mr. Costa?
10 feet of relief into that motion? Just 10 feet of relief is requested. Can we just add that?
Mr. Butler?
Yeah, I'll amend my motion to incorporate Mr. Costa's recommendation.
Second, Ms. Reese? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Chair votes yes, the ayes have it. Item number 5 is a pre-application meeting, major land development, conservation development, owner applicant, the Homes at Water Pond LLC, project name, the Homes at Waterman Pond, location 106 Bear Hill Road, Assessors Plat 17, Lot 21, and 110 Bear Hill Road, Assessors Plat 17, Lot 14. The applicant is proposing to construct 18 condominiums and conserve 60% of the land as open space. And just for notation, there will be no vote taken at this moment. And Mr. Costa, I will turn it over to you, as I'm going to recuse myself from this item.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
So this is the Bear Hill Road, Assessors Plat 17, Lot 21, and 110 Bear Hill Road, Assessors Plat 17, Lot 14. We have anybody in the audience, or I should say the board, anybody have any questions? Applicant, I'm sorry. Could you state your name, please, and address for the record?
Hi, good evening. My name is Jeffrey Hansen, a principal with Millstone Engineering, address at 250 Centerville Road, Warwick, Rhode Island. I'm the project engineer for the proposed development. I have with me this evening Irene Schmidt, who is the owner of the the Homes at Waterman Pond. We're here this evening for pre-application. I'll just briefly run through it. The property is 4.26 acres in size, combining the two lots. It's in an R3 zone. We are proposing 2 5-plex buildings. Is it possible to get the site plan up on the screen? Okay.
My apologies. Yeah, we've had a lot of technical issues. The packets were not uploaded to Clerk Base. The planning board does have.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what we're proposing are 2 5-plex buildings and 2 4-plex buildings with 1 common drive off of Bear Hill Road. We've got adequate parking for all of the units. We'll have 2 parking spaces in each, in the garage of each unit, and 2 surface parkings in front of the garage. We also have proposed 4 additional parking spaces for visitor parking. We did that as abundance of parking because at the TRC, at the request of the fire chief, we want to make sure we could have no parking within the driveway of the condominium. All the parking would be off of that, and that way it would never be impede any emergency vehicles that had to get into the facility for whatever reason. We're proposing 18 units, which is allowed under the R3 zone and conservation zone, where we would provide for total open space area of 110,966 square feet, and that would be on a separate lot, and the condominiums would be on its own lot of 74,589 square feet. That provides for an impervious lot coverage of 46%, which is less than the 50% required in the ordinance. As proposed right now, we are requesting no waivers or variances from any of the ordinance or regulations for the town of Cumberland. As the project moves forward through the various stages, we obviously will need DEM approval for these wetlands on the property. They'll review the wetlands up for the wetlands and for the stormwater. Public water and public sewer are available to the property, which we'd be tying into. To that, any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I had a question about the pond and the swamp area that's on the lot. So I did read the letter that McHugh Environmental did, and it looks like they delineated where they think the borders would need to be to buffer from the wetlands and the swamp. I know it's really early in the process and perhaps it's part of the DEM process, but I was curious if it has been done or it will be done, some kind of a hydrology analysis of a 100-year storm or greater, and what effect, I would imagine in a 100-year storm, the pond expands and then the swamp expands, and how close that gets to the development, if that's a concern.
As we move forward, part of the analysis and the design for the drainage system is we have to design for up to the 100-year storm. And what we have to demonstrate is that, or leaving off-site, we do not increase the peak rate of runoff or the volume of water going to the wetlands and ultimately off-site. So
Yeah.
that'll be part of that as we move forward. At the preliminary stage, we would have that information detailed.
Yeah, I guess my question was the opposite. So it's not so much the water from the development going into the wetlands, it's if there's a 100-year storm, how big does the pond get? And then how big does the swamp get, and how close does that get? So it's more the water coming from the pond and the swamp as opposed to water going into the pond and swamp.
Well, in theory, the pond won't get any bigger because we have to control it all on our property. We have to demonstrate that.
The only reason I mention it, and you know, it's hearsay, but I think the Valley Breeze did a story about this project being at the Technical Review Committee a month or so ago, and a lot of the comments that readers had to the story was about the pond and the swamp, and that when there are these big heavy rainstorms, the pond overflows, it goes onto this lot, and that was one of the big concerns that neighbors had. So I read the memo hoping there might be an answer to that. I understand it's all very preliminary and it's something that DEM will look at, but as we move through the process, it would be helpful to see not only the way stormwater is being contained on the site, but that whatever water is going to come from the other side of the lot where the pond and swamp are not going to affect either the surrounding neighbors or this new development. So thank you.
Yeah, I didn't see that article, but any other board members have any concerns? Mr. Zook.
I have a comment, not a question, but I believe in the write-up, sidewalks, a sidewalk was mentioned, and certainly there's not a lot of sidewalks on Bear Hill Road, but certainly the more sidewalks we can get, the better. So I appreciate the inclusion of a sidewalk in the proposal.
Anybody else? Yes.
Just to reiterate or ask, is your plan to have the condominium association be responsible for the maintenance and care of the open space?
I believe that was a suggestion of Public Works at the TRC. So, as you know, it's the condominium, there'll be a condominium association, and we'll have to work out those details. But I believe that they would remain in control and be the stewards of that open space.
Right, so that would be part of the proposal going
Yeah.
forward, would be that assumption and lay that out, on
That's-
how that would take place. And
Right.
what the elements of that might be. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just to add to that, for the conservation easement, they'll have to have a holder of the conservation easement, so for enforcement. So that can be the town, it can be the land trust, we can talk about that. But there will be sort of an oversight on that.
Okay. Was there any mention at the TRC of a traffic study?
They did not mention a traffic study, but we have engaged a traffic engineer to perform a traffic study as we move forward through the process in the town. So we'll have that at future meetings.
Because when I was reading this, I have major concerns about this project on Bear Hill Road. Talking about a street that doesn't have any sidewalks. And you're gonna put 18, potentially 30 some odd cars on that road because you have two-stall garages for the 18, correct?
Correct.
What about for the 8? How many garages do they get,
Oh, each building will have a two-car garage.
each one?
Yes.
It's a lot of cars to add on to Bear Hill Road.
That's why we've engaged a traffic engineer to perform that analysis.
Good idea. Yeah, excellent. That was my concern in reading this over. So that's good, that's being done. Anybody?
Just quick question.
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, is this the same developer owner as the adjacent newer condo?
The ones to the west, I believe, yes.
Okay. Is a similar fit and finish kind of expected?
On the cover page of the narrative is a rendering of what the condominium would look like.
Yeah, I see that. I'm just wondering how the appearance will be from the street. You know, the other condo development has a nice stone wall, it's got landscape.
Yes, that's the idea, is just to continue that theme through this project.
Yeah, okay. And for the pond in that conservation area, is that intended to remain natural, or will there be any access to it from?
I'll have to talk to my client as we move forward and what the intentions are, but I imagine that for the most part, because it's either a pond or some really thick wetlands, that it would remain in its present state.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else on the board? Oh, nobody? Okay. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to come forward and give their feelings or their concerns about this project? If you could just come up forward, state your name, please, for the record, your address.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Matthew Pimentel. I'm an attorney at Higgins, Kavanaugh & Cooney. We're located at 10 Dorrance Street, Providence, Rhode Island. I'm here representing Mr. Joseph Ragnoli. He's a resident of the town of Cumberland. He lives at 84 Crestwood Court here in town. We just have some serious concerns about the density of this project, the environmental concerns, the effect on the wetlands, the effect on potentially protected species that are located across Bear Hill Road on the other side, where it appears that the pond drains into. Given the significant development of that area in recent years, both to the northwest and east, as was previously mentioned, we have some significant concerns about the continued development and encroachment on that pond and in that area. As you've noted, Mr. Chairman, this is extremely early in the process, and we only have the applicant's preliminary plans. You know, we're hopeful to work with them potentially to address some of these concerns or to get some access to conduct additional environmental studies of the area, but I'm sure that'll happen as we go.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that area. I used to live on Crestwood Court. And we had a couple storms that the water ended up in the basement. So I'm very familiar with that leeway, that water that comes off at 295 and then goes underneath underneath and comes out again on the other side of Crestwood Court.
Yeah, it's where a lot of our concerns lead in this kind of the continued development, because ultimately the water has to go somewhere. And,
Yes, absolutely. So I haven't been there since I moved out, but I'd be curious to find out if anybody on Crestwood Court still has trouble with that water pond. You do.
so,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, thank you
Mr.
very much. Is there anybody else that'd like to come forward? Okay, we're not taking a vote on this evening, so it's basically right now, I believe, Ms. Salvatore, just to open the comments.
Yes, if this is your opportunity to give the developer feedback and what you expect to see at a master plan submission.
Okay. Anybody?
So I'll just reiterate the concerns about the hydro analysis, especially of that, of the wetlands. I agree with Mr. Costa about the traffic. You know, Bear Hill Road was a horse path. I don't think it was ever designed to accommodate the sea of condominiums that are in that area. Obviously, the town zoned that area R3, so that's where they want the condos to be, but I do share Mr. Costa's concern about the traffic and the safety of Bear Hill Road today, and again, as he mentioned, adding another 30 or 40 cars onto that road only could exacerbate that situation. So I would also look forward to the traffic study. You know, the applicant did an excellent job with the condos next door that were built. They're beautiful. It adds a lot to the area. So you know, I'm sure these would be equally as nice, but there are some concerns I think we have to take into account in this particular area of town.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Any other board members have any comments, anything they'd like to add?
Yep, I got one more thing.
That's great.
So I happened to notice on the survey that there's a stone wall called out, and I know that recently there's been some discussion about historic stone walls in the town and maintaining them to the best of our ability. I'm just wondering if you have any information on that stone wall. And
The stone wall that runs through the buildings on the right-hand side of the driveway, it runs right where the buildings are proposed, that stone wall will be removed and reset either on the left property line or along the front of the property. No stones will be removed from the property. They'll just be relocated and rebuilt as part of this project.
okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else would like to come forward? Sir, would you like to say a few words about the water?
Good evening. My name is Joe Rossignoli. I live at 84 Crestwood Court. Joseph M. Rossignoli, Rossignoli. I live at 84 Crestwood Court. Yes, I have some very deep concerns around the potential adverse impacts that this project would have on surrounding environmentally sensitive areas, as well as a traffic study. There was a fatality on this road not a long time ago, which probably within 10 years. The traffic's only getting worse. On top of that, it's the project, particularly the buildings on the east side, the two 4-unit buildings on the east side will essentially be right on top of the wetlands as it's delineated by the engineer. I share the concerns of Mr. Butler in that, if I could say so, that you know, I think a fresh delineation, an independent delineation would be appropriate here. I took a ride by there recently, and I'm not sure that what's been posted in terms of stakes for the current delineation by McHugh is correct. Obviously, there's going to be, with this new project, there's going to be fertilizer, phosphorus draining into the pond. I don't see an operation and maintenance plan to stop that. There's a lot of concerns about this project, and so I'm here to lodge my objection. To answer your question, Mr. Costa, yes, there are. In fact, I take a daily walk with my golden retriever, and I see all the pipes now pumping out, as you probably recall from your days on Crestwood Court, pumping out water. Some people feel that it's due to the development downstream from that water table. Not sure, but those water issues from Mills River continue in that area. So that's my objection.
We'll
Thank
look
you.
forward to the studies that where we are requesting, and we'll go from there. Last call, anybody? On the board, all set? Okay. Close this portion. Go on. Oh, the queue. Anybody in the queue? Thank you. That's all right. Nobody in the queue? Okay, then that ends this session. Thank you for coming, everybody. And Mr. Kutu will return at 7:30. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Costa. All right. The next item of business is okay, I got it correctly. Public hearing, review of amended land development and subdivision regulations. The regulations are proposed for amendment to address climate resiliency and best planning practices. This item was continued from the February 26, 2026 Planning Board meeting.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Nate Kelly. Horsley Whitson Group, HOSLEY-WITTEN Group. Seen several of you before, I remember this evening, just as a review, this project was funded at the state level to provide technical assistance to the town of Cumberland to do regulatory reform, looking at your regulations through the lens of climate resilience. So how are you developing your land and how is that responding to a changing climate? So I know there's a few items on the agenda tonight for this, dealing with different regulatory pieces in your overall system. Within the land development regulations, excuse me, I'll take a step back. There was a lengthy process that I think some of you participated in all the way through. This is not the first time, of course, that I've been before you, but along the way, we've had DPW by our side going through these changes. We've had folks at the state level with the Rhode Island Department of Transportation, the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management, people who use similar regulations so that we could coordinate and make sure that those systems worked as well as you sort of move back and forth between answering to the state and then answering to local regulations. So it was a fairly lengthy process that I think was well researched and certainly well vetted. Within your land development regulations, which is the first piece that you're looking at tonight, I think, by way of summary, the sort of big ticket items on this are changes to your drainage requirements, and these changes were made to strengthen what you have. It wasn't sort of a deviation in policy or a deviation in approach. So a lot of what you talked about tonight in terms of storm retention and all those things are there, but either clearer or stronger in terms of what they're requiring. We, again, coordinated those or mirrored those with the state level requirements so that it would be easy for you to review applications that were going to the state or just exclusively coming to you. They would look the same. The engineers would be using sort of the same approach as they go through this and answering basically to the same standards. So those are in lockstep. kind of going, so there's not two completely different things going on. The protections that I believe that are increased, that I know are increased within those drainage system requirements do deal specifically with flooding. You know, the models that were developed in Rhode Island, maybe back in 2010, I believe was the last big sort of revamp of the stormwater requirements. Those really focused on water quality, and that water quality piece is intact, is still there. But now, you know, 16 years later, we realize, you all know, you talked about it tonight, that flooding is at the top of everybody's mind. And so the standards that are augmented in your requirements are pertaining to flooding. So that's sort of one big element of the regulations that you're looking at. In an overlapping fashion, another big element that you're looking at is landscaping. As many of you know, more and more designers and developers and engineers are using landscaping to do more than just make a site look nice. It's providing heat control, it's providing stormwater retention, it's providing water quality treatment for stormwater, and it's really an essential way to capture water up in the watershed before it becomes a problem further downhill. And so your landscaping standards, which were already good, which the ones you have now are good, we added a fair amount of material to that to integrate the stormwater management piece, and then to also add a lot of information relative to landscape plant selection and installation. As I've talked about with you all before in a previous meeting, the plants you choose and how you put them in the ground is really more than half the battle in terms of making sure that landscape is going to stay healthy. In the long term, you're going to be able to take care of it, and it's going to be able to do the job that you're asking it to do. So there's a lot of material in there just about how landscape architects, landscape designers, and all the good ones do this already. They think about what's going to happen in this particular part of the site, what are my opportunities here, what are the stresses that these plants are going to feel over time? Are they going to be throwing snow on top of it? Is there going to be salt, cars parked next to it? If those sorts of things are happening, a good landscape architect is going to make an educated choice about not only the plant they select, but how they install it and how they take care of it. So a lot of the material that you have in here now addresses that issue. That's your second big ticket item. A third item, which doesn't have a lot of text, but I think will have a lot of impact, is clarifying that the town has the authority, and many cities and towns do this in Rhode Island and beyond, to have a third party help you review applications at the expense of the applicant. A lot of times when you say that, some people will say, well, maybe that's not fair to the applicant. Actually, the more you talk to applicants, the more they like this. These fees are not extravagant, and time is money. And so these are fees that applicants are generally more than happy to pay to have a professional engineer or a professional architect or a landscape architect come in, take a look at those plans, and they're experts. They can do it faster than I can, they can do it faster than you can, and then you can rely on those opinions. It gives you the assurance that you can say, okay, this is a good site plan, you've satisfied all the requirements, we can move forward. So there's provisions in here now that just make it clear that you have the authority to do that and how that's going to work going forward. Other than that, there are some miscellaneous pieces in here. There's a minor change, for example, to street grading requirements that the DPW asked us to put in, so we accommodated that in our requirements. But that's really sort of a broad overview of the big items that are in your consideration now, for your consideration in your land development subdivision regulations. You know this, but just for the folks at home or our new member here, the checklists that go with these requirements, those were moved not too long ago into the administrative positions. So the planning board does not officially adopt or approve checklists. That's handled by staff. But we did do those revisions. I believe those were delivered to you so that you could take a look at those. But those accompany these changes that are for your consideration for adoption. And I can entertain any specific questions, provided I can, find what we're looking for in this stack of paper. But happy to entertain any questions or discussion.
Questions, Mr. Butler?
Mr. Chair, I had one comment, one question. The comment is, I appreciate strengthening the peer review portion in our regulations. There have been a couple of times that we have reached an agreement with applicants to have a peer review, and I have always found it very helpful. I mean, 90% of the time, both engineers agree, but there's that 10% where we've been able to improve an application or improve a project just based on somebody else taking a fresh look at it. And I do sometimes get a little concerned that, for some bigger projects, we're relying almost completely on the applicants, attorneys, and experts to tell us what the situation is. And sometimes you just have a question and, town staff maybe aren't equipped to, give the most in-depth analysis. And so in those situations, having that opportunity to ask for a peer review, I think will be very helpful. My question was, the pages aren't numbered, but it's on the back of, it says Land Development Subdivision Section 6, and on the back there's a chart that just outlines the changes. And in 22.6, its compliance with minimum standard 3 represents the biggest change from Cumberland's current policy. And then the last sentence says, HW recommends the inclusion of this new language, but recognizes this will be a significant change in how many applications are reviewed. And I was just wondering, from a practical perspective, what that meant. Is that, are we putting more requirements on applicants as part of the checklist, or is it just the planning staff, is it just going to have more things to look at, or we're going to have more things
You'll have more in your drainage report to look at.
Okay.
And again, a third-party person can help you with it. So it'll be, like with anything, for those of you who've been doing this a while, this will be new. For those of you who haven't, off you go. But it'll be a new requirement, and like anything else, it takes some getting used to. There may be some questions along the way. But again, it's pretty standard material. It's not something that's completely from out of left field or very onerous. I think it really satisfies what the town's been looking for. It's just something new.
So is it something that, like on a typical project, that the designer, the engineer that's working would be able to supply this information, or is the applicant going to have to go out and find another expert to create another report?
No, I mean, and again, like this was one of those things that the state is already asking for this. So if you have an engineer, like you just did, who's familiar with working and has ever had to do permitting with DEM, they're not going to blink at this. They're not going to think twice. But it's new material for you all.
Great, thank you so much.
Other questions or comments? Oh, okay. Okay. Now, this is a public hearing, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the floor for questions or comments at this point in time. So if there's anybody here in the audience or with us virtually, if you're here in person, you can come to the podium and give us your name and address for the record, and whatever questions or comments you may have. Again, if you're here virtually, just click on that little button that says, a little hand on there, and you'll be recognized. So, is anyone here who would like to speak?
Mr. Chairman, there's no one raising their hand virtually.
Okay. And I see no one here raising their hand, so I'll close the public hearing at, let's see, 7:42 p.m. and restrict comments to the board.
So, Mr. Salvatore, are we just making a motion to approve the amended land development subdivision regulations?
Yeah, the amendments to the land development and subdivisions regulations as proposed.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the amendments that have been presented tonight to the land development and subdivision regulations.
I have a motion by Mr. Butler. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by, Mr. D'Ambrosio. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes yes. Motion carries. Okay. Item number 7, Town Council recommendation, ordinance 2026-01, amending sections of the Code of Ordinances relating to stormwater management, flood hazards, soil erosion, and sediment control, and utilities. The Code of Ordinances proposed for amendment to address climate resiliency and best planning practices. And Mr. Kelly, I guess you're...
Well, Mr. Chairman, I just want to remind you, and just for the public also, this is in the Code of Ordinances, which does not require a planning board recommendation. However, you know, there's no harm in you listening to the presentation, asking questions, and even providing a recommendation if you choose. It's just not required.
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
question.
Oh, Mr. Costa?
Just a quick question. Now, is this all going to be downloaded into a book or website or someplace where we could access it?
Both. So the Code of Ordinances, including the zoning ordinances, are found online.
Yep. Okay.
I don't know if we get hard copies anymore, but when an ordinance is enacted by the council, it is then codified in the code. So they take, that's why there's underlines and strikeouts.
Yeah.
The codification company takes those documents that you're approving and inserts and deletes the language so that it's one clean document.
And is this a live document so that this?
Yeah, just if you Google Cumberland, Rhode Island Code of Ordinances,
Yeah.
all of the ordinances, both general ordinances and zoning ordinance are there, as well as your subdivision regulations. The zoning ordinance is, I think, Appendix B, and the subdivision regulations, I believe, is Appendix A.
Okay.
So you just, literally, that's how I do it. Google Cumberland, Rhode Island Code of Ordinances, it'll bring you right to it. And it will be the clean version. Usually takes about a month after the town council approves the amendment.
And does it say it's been revised and when it was revised?
Yes.
So that we'll know it's a clean copy?
Yes, so, yeah, there's a lot of tools in the codified version. So underneath each section, it says when it was originally enacted, and then it has revision dates, and then you can go over to Clerk Base, which is another, I would call it a portal, for lack of a better term, where you can view, just like you can access on Clerk Base your materials, you can go on Clerk Base and access ordinances, resolutions, town council meetings, minutes for planning, zoning, and council.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Kelly?
Great, thank you. Again, Nate Kelly with Worsley Witten Group. I'll go over these maybe even more quickly, but just to give you a sense of, what we tackled, because it does overlap. That's probably the greatest challenge of this particular project, is making sure you account for all of the overlap with the different regulations and the different folks who are looking at this. So there are 3 sort of heavy hitters here. The first is soil erosion and sedimentation control. And so this, of course, does cross over with stormwater drainage. This crosses over with landscaping and site development. But it's not uncommon for the general code to specifically handle soil erosion and sediment control. It's easier to enforce that way, easier to inspect, and so it's pretty common to see that in the general ordinance. And it captures all levels of development. You're not going to lose anything because it doesn't qualify as land development or, development plan review or whatever that is. It's universal. So the biggest change here that it certainly visually looks different, is we literally had to kind of strike everything and replace. And that's not because all the material was new, it's because the ordinance had to be completely reorganized, and it also had to be updated to meet the state level requirements. So it was primarily a housekeeping issue. But all of the standards related to how sites get cleared, how they get protected, the practices that are used to keep debris and other things from running off the site if it happens to rain during construction, all of those protections are there, all of those practices are there. So I don't think there's a real, urgent need to sort of go into that in detail. But it's when you look at the proposed change, you're like, oh my God, they threw the whole thing out. No, we didn't. We just rearranged, we kind of reshuffled all the material, and then we made updates to make it consistent with the state requirements. The other piece, which is even less involved, but we wanted to take a look at it because it is stormwater, is your illicit discharge detection and elimination ordinance. Every community that's an MS4 regulated has discharges to waters of the U.S. If you have a pipe that goes into the Blackstone, that type of thing, you are what that's called an MS4 community. And if you are an MS4 community, you need to have an ordinance that tells people they cannot tie into these drainage systems with their washing machine, with their sump pump, with like all these different things. That's an illicit connection. And so that's what this very brief ordinance deals with. It says you can't do that. If you do it, there's gonna be an enforcement action against you. So we made very few changes to this. It was pretty much fine as it was. There's some housekeeping items, some updates. That's your illicit discharge detection and elimination ordinance. It used to be called stormwater. We changed it to the more complicated name. The one that we probably worked the most on in your ordinance is your, what you call today, your special flood hazard area. And so if any of you were involved, for example, in the hazard mitigation planning that we worked on with you, you may remember that for a community to receive certain insurance benefits, they have to have certain regulatory protections to qualify for those. And this is really where that lives. So when FEMA is reviewing local ordinances, or REMA is reviewing local ordinances to check for insurance compliances, this is the one they're flipping through to make sure you check all the boxes. So as part of the exercise that we did was, do you check all the boxes? So we took care of that. And so this deals with your 100-year floodplain, basically, like what you can and can't do, or if you are going to do something, what are the protections and what are the assurances that you have to put in. And so we, I guess the most notable things that we did is we extended the jurisdiction of the ordinance to include the 500-year floodplain. Cumberland doesn't have a very big 500-year floodplain because your banks are very steep down to the Blackstone. But you do have some areas that are in the 500-year floodplain, and we didn't put any onerous requirements in there. It's basically common sense. Don't store hazardous materials outside. If you have storage outside, it has to be elevated. Don't have people living on the first floor or in the basement. That's dangerous. So like those sorts of like kind of basic, no nonsense, not expensive requirements, those apply very clearly in the 500-year floodplain. The more technical and strict requirements that are in the 100-year floodplain still apply, but we improved some of those. So you had some sort of some language that we weren't quite sure where it came from, for example, where you are allowed a certain amount, a small amount of displacement. If you put a structure in the floodplain, you allow for a certain amount of elevation increase. And that's really kind of a no-no from a regulatory and insurance perspective. So we dropped that back down to like, basically no increase. And those were examples of little audit things that we did through there. And then we strengthened a lot of the language around hazardous materials, about what you can keep, what you can't, store things, how that happens. And so they're all in there. regulating floodplains is complicated because the language is very confusing in terms of what's a regulatory floodway versus, and is there one designated versus on a river where there isn't one designated, and how do the different requirements apply, and how does this all work together? So a lot of our, we have certified floodplain managers on staff, and they did all that work and combed through this and make sure it's really airtight. So that was where we did the most technical work, was in that flood hazard area ordinance. And so those are the really big ones that are going to go to town council for the general code, but I can entertain any questions there. And again, no action is required other than discussion.
I had one housekeeping and one question. The housekeeping is on page 2, line 39. At the end of the sentence, the word "the" is struck through, but I think the next word "following" also needs to be struck through. So right now, it says general permit, but are limited to following those. I think it's supposed to be, but are limited to those specifically. I think the word "following."
Which ordinance is this in?
This is the
14-123.
the amending sections of the Code of Ordinances, the second page, line 39, under definitions.
Is it the flood hazard? Is it soil erosion? Which article is it, or chapter? 14-1, okay. Okay, so this is the discharge one, thank you. All right, this is on the second page?
Yeah, line 39, all the way at the end.
Yes, got it, okay.
And then the question I had was on a couple of pages in 14-129, water course protection. And it says every person owning property through which a water course passes shall keep and maintain that part of the water course within the property reasonably free of trash, debris, and then we're striking out excessive vegetation. And I'm just wondering why we're striking out excessive vegetation.
Let me just find out where you are.
What's that?
This is on page...
It's 7, page 7.
Okay.
Water course protection, right
Yes,
in the
okay.
middle, line 250.
This is one of those that we felt was ambiguous and can cause conflicts. A lot of, how do you interpret excessive vegetation? And the other piece here is a lot of the excessive vegetation that is in our water courses, unfortunately today, are invasive species. And what we don't want happening is somebody going in with a machete and knocking the heck out of a huge stand of Japanese knotweed, and then everybody downstream now, next year, has massive stands of Japanese knotweed, done. So I think the intent is good here, but some of the unforeseen consequences and the issues around defining that are why that's struck.
Okay.
If I may, I was distracted for a minute. Did you clarify that following language?
So following, I think, just needs to be struck out.
Okay, so when you make your recommendation, you're going to just, identify that in your motion. That's all. That's all I want. And you can do it by line.
Yep.
I like line numbers for
Yep.
that reason.
Mr. Costa?
Yes. How does all this relate to homeowners that have holding ponds?
That have,
Holding ponds.
so their own sort of pond on site that they're draining into?
Yeah, for the whole street. Say you have a street and you have 30 houses that, and all the storm drain, everything off the roof of the house, all the stuff that's in the nasty stuff that's in the street, all goes into somebody's holding pond.
Yeah, so detention basins, right, are things that have historically been used. They will still be used, but differently and better. So there are design standards in your current regulations about what those detention basins should look like. There's been some clarification made here in terms of ensuring that there's access, ensuring that that some of the times, you'll see it on a site plan and then you don't realize until you get built, well, you can't even get a truck in there to sort of like help clean that thing out and that sort of thing. So they will still be used because for better or for worse, as one of the previous engineers mentioned, you need to retain some pretty significant storms. So basins will be used, but what's better about the new regulations at the state level and herein is that that's not the only thing that's being used. So you're trying to capture water along the way. So instead of 100,000 gallons getting to the bottom of the hill, maybe 30,000 gallons gets to the bottom of the hill. And the size of your detention basin significantly decreases because you did a lot of work upstream to help capture some of that water. So will you still have detention basins? Probably.
But that's for new construction. What about existing construction?
The ones that you have now, so those are part of, I guess it's the question of like, what's the problem, right? So if one of those fails in the sense of it breaks and water is leaking from it, then that's an enforcement action, related to public safety. In terms of whether or not it's maintained, that's an enforcement action that could probably go through your land development regulations and bring it up to code, as they say, and create something that's actually functioning, or it's not full of trash, or it's not protected from all the school kids running through it and doing all that fun stuff. So yeah, there will be opportunities to improve those with these regulations. They're shown to be not in compliance.
But the responsibility for cleaning, having it certified by an engineer, is the owner's responsibility, okay? And here's my role, okay? You have a development, okay? And there's a storm drain system designed so all the water goes down to the detention basin and discharges. So everybody's runoff, including grass clippings, salts, sands, somebody washes his muddy car in the driveway, it goes down there to that basin and fills up. The poor guy on the end of that owns that detention basin, okay, is responsible for cleaning that and all the debris that's come from uphill. And it's not fair to that particular homeowner to have the responsibility to pay an engineer to go down there and look at it and certify it, to pay somebody to go in there and clean it out. It should be, in my mind, and I know in other towns, because I used to work in the town of North Kingstown, that those basins were the responsibility of the people in the entirety whose runoff discharges into that basin, not that poor guy that's sitting down there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, can I weigh in on this? Because
Yeah.
the problem is, Nate, Mr. Costa, who asked the question, is responsible for all the drainage in his neighborhood. And I happen to live in that neighborhood, by the way. But now, not in 1990, but in the years we live in now, and even past, we require a homeowners association that will pay into a fund that, and we have easements or whatever, and so the entire neighborhood is paying. But when this development was built, they didn't do that. So one guy, who happens to be Mr. Costa, it sits at the bottom of the hill, and he is responsible. But again, going forward, all of our developments require a homeowners association, so that doesn't happen anymore.
Including the existing.
What?
Including the existing developments, of which you and Mr. Costa reside.
No, they didn't create one. They didn't create a homeowners association for whatever reason.
So he's the odd man out.
Exactly. And I'm sure we have other developments in Cumberland where one person is responsible. Whoever bought the lot that has the holding pond, or whatever they called it back then, is responsible for it. Today, that's not the case. So, we've addressed it.
Guess you gotta move.
But, yeah, I mean, this comes up. This comes up. But he was asking a vague question, so I wanted to be sure that we understood that going forward, that doesn't happen anymore. Right.
But I do feel for the people, and I know because you live there, and it's like,
About the development where the discharge was coming off of 295 going into a development. I'm not gonna mention the development, but, that was horrible. But anyway, we're getting off track.
well, it's something that's just gonna kind of die. And you gotta live with what you got.
Yeah. Waterfront property.
Any other questions or comments at this point? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a recommendation, I'll make a motion that we send a recommendation to the town council that ordinance 2026-01 is consistent with the goals and purposes of the comprehensive plan, and we would recommend in section 14-123, line 39, that the word following be stricken after the word the, which is also stricken. End of motion.
Motion by Mr. Butler,
So moved.
second by Mr. Costa. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes yes. Motion carries. Mr. Salvatore, the next item
Yes.
doesn't require action by this board, or?
No, the next item does. The one that you just addressed did not require action by this board.
Oh, okay.
But the next one absolutely does, because it's an amendment to the zoning ordinance.
Okay, but in this case, it was important that Mr. Butler made that comment about the revision. to be
Yeah,
made.
no, that was
Yeah,
helpful.
okay. All right. Item number 8, Town Council Recommendation, Ordinance 2026-03, amending zoning ordinance of the Town of Cumberland, Rhode Island as amended. The zoning ordinance proposed for amendment to address climate resiliency and best planning practices. Mr. Kelly.
Okay. Nate Kelly, Horsley Witten Group, presenting on the third agenda item tonight related to this project. We have talked about the land development and subdivision regulations. We have talked about the general code. Now we will talk about the zoning ordinance. Not a lot of work was done here, but it is certainly work that you need to review and make a recommendation for town council to consider in the ordinance subcommittee. One of the most obvious sources of stormwater is impervious cover. And one of our most common, one of the areas in land development regulation where the town has a lot to say, has a lot of authority, is in parking lots. And so we addressed a lot of the parking lot design issues in the land development and subdivision regulations, how a parking lot is laid out, how much of it needs to be landscaped, and all of those other requirements I talked about in terms of plant selection and stormwater and that type of thing. The amount of parking is almost always regulated in the zoning ordinance. So in every parking lot, you have the general code, the land development, and the zoning all at play in terms of different requirements on how this particular structure gets built. The amount of parking is something that, for very good reason, is a bit of a head scratcher for local authorities because you are trying to create a consistent system for an issue that is very site specific. So it's really hard to make universal parking requirements for how many cars you need for different uses, because different neighborhoods work differently, different uses work differently from one place to another. It's easy to say you need a certain amount of parking for every residential unit, but what about every office building, and what about every warehouse, and what if it's a mix of uses and all of those things? And so it is difficult to try to get it right, as you've probably seen with different applications coming through. So we were asked to look at the existing parking requirements, and the direction was basically, let's not, try to make any radical changes here, but are there any modest changes you could make here that you think would make an improvement? And so we went through the list of all the uses and all the parking requirements, and one of the things we did that I think will be helpful is with some of these uses that are really difficult to figure out, instead of imposing a fixed requirement on it, we gave the applicant the opportunity to submit a proposal and just say, this is what my place of assembly is going to look like. This is what my warehouse is going to look like, and this is how it's going to operate. And if you put a static requirement on there, it might have said that it needed 30 parking spaces. And the applicant might make a really good case that I really only need 18 to make this work correctly. And so the change in the language provides that opportunity for a select handful of uses. And that's worked very well in other communities, and so people generally appreciate that opportunity. And I think as you use it, what we've seen in other communities is more and more uses get kind of put into that category as the town or the city gets more comfortable with that. So that was one of the things that we inserted in there. The other piece is loading. I know I talked to you all about this, but I always talk about, for those of us who drive in the morning to get someplace, you're driving down Main Street and there's a delivery truck right out front, double parked. They run their stuff in, they run their stuff out. You might have been delayed an extra minute, but that's the way our world works. And that's the way, is particularly in these like more compact, your more urbanized areas of the community, that's how loading works. And the loading requirements that I see over and over again that are universally applied are the kind of loading requirements that are better for a Stop and Shop, that are better for Staples, that are, like you have the Bay and all of that. And most of these smaller uses, most of these smaller businesses do not even have the space for that. They can't comply with the loading requirement. And so we made significant adjustments to that just allow for many types of business to move forward without major loading requirements. The other piece that we added, some of you may remember we talked about, is, the question was asked in our early engagement, well, what are we going to do about existing parking lots? Most of the parking lots that we're going to see have already been built in the town of Cumberland. And so what do we do about that? And so we've added language here in the non-conformity section. So this is where we've created an opportunity. So remember, non-conformity is when an existing use that was established legally, it was built, back in 1965, this parking lot was built in 1965, it doesn't conform with the existing regulations. So it's allowed to continue. But what happens if the person wants to expand the parking lot? What happens if the person wants to do major construction on the parking lot, install a stormwater device or something like that? So now they're fiddling with, they're altering or they're expanding a pre-existing non-conforming use, and that puts the ball back in the town's court. And so we've got sort of a discussion in here about how that's going to go forward. No real strict requirements, because it's impossible to try to capture all the different situations that could be happening. But it sets the stage that says you're going to expand this non-conforming parking lot. You're going to significantly alter this non-conforming parking lot. You're going to have a discussion with the town about bringing that into greater compliance. It may just mean putting in a few trees, or it may be solving a significant drainage problem. It sort of depends on the opportunities and the challenges that you're trying to address with that particular parking lot. So that discussion's kind of been open for you at this point, rather than sort of just letting people, do what they do and move on and nothing's been improved, right? So I think those are kind of the big pieces of the parking.
Board have any questions?
I have a question.
Mr. Constant?
I can think of two areas in Cumberland that they have humongous parking lots that they don't use. So, and it was built probably back in the 60s. I mean, it's been a while, like you just mentioned. So how do we as a board stand before an attorney or an architect that comes in and says to us, they really need all this big parking lot, and we say, no, you don't. So who has the leverage?
So they're going to redevelop the area.
Yeah.
I think they have there's no parking. So for example, some communities have parking maximums. Like many communities have minimums. You're going to have a minimum of 2 spaces per residential unit. You're going to have 1 space for every 300 square feet. So that's the minimum. They never put a ceiling on it. And so there are communities out there who do put a ceiling. That's not part of the work that we did, but like that is something that you can consider going forward, because it can get out of control with some of these uses.
And they have, in the past, they have.
Yeah,
It
certainly.
drives me crazy when I go by these 2 particular spots, and they're all seagulls.
Right.
They don't need parking spots.
But what you do have in place now is if you have a parking lot that's 2 acres wide, 2 acres big, and it's been kind of vacant for a while or underused, and someone's going to come in and they're going to put a brand new building there, and they're going to use this parking lot, now you have standards for how that parking lot needs to function. So the improvements to the parking lot have to be consistent with all of your landscaping requirements and all of your drainage requirements. Because again, if it was put up in 1966, the landscaping is probably non-existent and the drainage is probably non-existent. That was fine at the time.
Yes.
And so, but now you have clear requirements, so that's going to get redeveloped. You have standards that you have to meet with that parking area.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Zuck?
Just a comment, my heart broke a little bit to see video rental store struck from the list, appropriately so, but time marches on, I suppose.
Time marches on, yes.
I have a comment, and I'm looking at page 4 and 14-2, and minimum widths of parking spaces. Issue that has come up is minimum 9-foot width, okay, and then a length of 18. Minimum 9-foot width, in this is my feeling, because especially down at the supermarket, my car got clipped, I don't know how many times, because a big pickup truck tried to pull into that spot and clip the backside of my car, and guy disappeared, okay? The problem is that, you know, we, at one time, they used to have parking spaces for compact cars, full-size cars, and so on. But to try to regulate and to tell the guy in that big Dodge pickup truck, okay, which is his family vehicle because it's at least a 5-seater, okay, 4 doors, and they pull in there and they don't care. And then if they can manage to get into the 9-foot spot, okay, they've got about 6 inches on either side to be able to open their door. So what they'll do is they'll hug one side a little bit more so they get more than 6 inches, they get 12 inches. So I kind of think that 9 feet is one of those things that, and I know it's going to change because it may be some years from now, they're not going to be those big Dodge, Chevy, GMC pickups. But right now, it really, steals my wool, that somebody pulls in and clips my brand new car and walks away. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, and I know the standard for some garages is a 9-foot wide doorway, okay? Well, if you got mirrors on a vehicle, you better hope those mirrors move in because they get clipped trying to get into a garage that's only got a 9-foot opening. So 18 feet's fine with me, but that 9 feet I think is really.
Yeah, and these are the standards you have on the books today. So those are the ordinance standards that you had today. Remember, the minimum's the minimum. It's not the requirement.
Right.
Right. So that it's sort of seen as an opportunity. It's a worthwhile question to be asking when you look at a site plan, where are the trucks going to park?
Yeah.
You know, if you're at a Home Depot or a Ace Hardware, and I find it hard to believe, if they know if they have a thought about what they're doing, they're not going to put in 9-foot stalls. You got pickups going in everywhere.
And that's just it. If you go to Home Depot, okay, or Lowe's or whatever, those parking spaces are a little bit wider because they anticipated that there'll be a lot of
Right.
trucks in there. And it's great, it's comfortable, you know, for somebody who's like me in my car driving in there, okay, I got a little extra space.
No, and when you go to Stop and Shop, they have the buffer in between, right? The painted buffer. It's not a single line. There's
Yeah.
sort of like that little like 15-inch alleyway that they put in between every space because the car, you know, is going to go through. The people got to get through. So, you know, the people should be thinking about the needs, you know, of their customers, certainly.
Some of it's well thought out, and those spaces work. And other times they're trying to cram as much density, parking space density as they possibly can, and they get squeezed in here. Guy on a motorcycle, he's got it made, but,
Yeah.
you know. It's just a comment that, you know.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we send a recommendation to the town council that ordinance 2026-03, amending the zoning ordinance of the town of Cumberland, is consistent with the goals and purposes of the comprehensive plan.
I have a motion by Mr. Butler, second by Mr. Zook. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair votes yes, the motion carries. Director's report.
Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nate. I think we're going to hold off on this. I think it's definitely worth revisiting this. I just haven't had, I did talk to the former planning director a little bit about this, but I just want to think about it and perhaps wait for a new planning director.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I have any major thoughts before we have somebody new, I'll bring them to your attention.
Okay. And on that note, for everybody, Mr. Odegaard has resigned his position as director of planning. So I want to make sure everybody knew that, okay? And going forward, we'll learn a little bit more about what the decisions are being made to bring people on board.
So, and I can expand a little bit on that. So we are in the process of hiring, because Abby left a few weeks ago. So we're in the process of hiring a deputy planning director. And I am acting as your administrative officer. So I know the mayor's trying to bring somebody in, at least temporarily. But right now, if you have any questions, I mean, I think most of you probably even have my cell phone, but feel free to reach out. But my role right now is just to try to make sure that applications are getting before you, being deemed complete as required, things like that.
And we also have an item for public comment. If there's anyone in the audience or virtually would like to make a comment, feel free to do so right at this moment. I know we have an audience here, and we welcome you to our meeting, and I hope it's been informative for you. But if you have any comments, please come forward. We don't bite, by the way. Okay, and with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion by Mr. Butler, second by the entire board. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Opposed?
No.
Ayes have it. Thank you, everyone.